It's a great honor for me to be here. I want to give a big shout out to Matt and this incredible meetup. I've been coming here for a couple years now, so I know a lot of friendly, familiar faces, and it's been such a special group, the Chicago Psychedelics is the Future of Psychiatry Meetup, bringing up people together in these times to share ideas and to talk science and talk all of these incredible solutions. Tonight, I'm going to be presenting my book, Worth the Fight, Acting for a Better World, a guide to spirituality, psychedelic medicines, and overcoming trauma. Really, I share my story to the degree to which I leverage my story to tell a larger narrative about what is possible on an individual and a collective level if we embrace a more sane way of looking at mental health. Michael Pollan just wrote a book that many of y'all have probably read, How to Change Your Mind, The New Science of Psychedelics. He's got 7 New York Times bestsellers to his credit. I don't have any New York Times bestsellers to my credit. I don't really have anything to my credit, with an exception of a potentially vital mission of hope and healing that I've been working for the last few years ago, advocating for our United States war veterans. My 35th birthday, October 16th, 2014. I just sold my business. I've been working in Chicago, in corporate America for 13, 14 years. And immediately, the night that I sold my business, I'm supposed to be celebrating this monumental accomplishment. And all I could think about was the path that I'm on right now that didn't really exist at that time. I felt a strong calling to heal with ayahuasca. And I was down in the jungles of Costa Rica 2 months later, having a profound healing experience with ayahuasca, really opening up. I thought that I'd done my work, my healing work, and I'd engaged some deeply rooted childhood sexual trauma in my early 30s, and addressing this with my family, and I'd started meditating. I'd had some success with psilocybin and finding relief, but going down that ayahuasca rabbit hole, I really found out that I had much more work to do, healing work to do, and ultimately, I had the opportunity, after selling my business, I took a year to untangle myself really from the mess that I created, the interpersonal relationships and some of the struggles that I was having. And I call that time, really the last few years, fruitful darkness. This is a term coined by Trevor Hall. He's an artist that really inspired artists that many of you, I'm sure, are aware of. And I set out on an 18-month travel journey after my time in Chicago and corporate America. And it was my intention to, this was a truth-seeking journey. And where can I best fit in for the next 50 or 60 years of my life? Knowing that I don't really fit with the whole corporate thing, and I gave that a shot. And I'm a big believer that the degree to which we know our darkness is the degree to which we can stand in our light. And that was a pretty dark time. Of course, I had some amazing travels and experiences, but really looking deep within and finding out where I can best be of service. At month 17 of my 18-month travel journey, I came across a veteran organization called Veterans for Entheogenic Therapy. And this work, it really drew me in. And I had the opportunity, I guess, I jumped ahead a little bit. Some of my big takeaway from my travel journey and time away, again, 18 months with a backpack, coming back and looking at our collective mental health, I look at it completely as a spiritual crisis of ignorance. We've essentially forgotten what we are. We are so numbed with drugs, alcohol, pharmaceuticals, TV, work, porn, sex, you name it. We have a way to really cover up and hide from our truth. And one of my heroes, Jamie Wheel, he wrote the book Stealing Fire. He says that we're stardust dressed as matter, and we've forgotten that. So it's my hope and prayer that this story, my story told in this manner, will help people waking up to that truth. So I came across this veteran organization, and I was shocked to find out that we have 22 United States veterans that die by their own hand every single day. And that number is likely a lot more than that. We're talking potentially 10,000 plus of our warriors that are dying on our own soil, committing suicide. When I found that out, and then to find out further that 90% at the time that I had jumped on board with Ryan LeCompte, the ayahuasca burley drinking Marine here, he had upwards of 150 veterans through his program. And at 90% of the veterans, it wasn't the arm that was missing, it wasn't the foot that was missing, it wasn't the brigade of people that were blown up or the war trauma itself. It was the childhood sexual trauma, time and time again, that was at root, that appears to be driving our warriors to go to war in the first place. Sebastian Junger wrote a book called Tribe. I'm sure many of y'all have heard of him and maybe read his book. There's a really poignant caption. He did incredible research and he really tells the story of, as an expert of PTSD, homecoming, and belonging. But the modern day veterans that fought in Iraq and Afghanistan are 2 times more likely to report childhood sexual trauma in the early years of childhood development than those that fought at random in Vietnam. And mind you, I said report. For anybody that knows anything about sexual shame, it's a really challenging thing to talk about. And most people would rather take this to the grave than to say those words, "It's not on me, this happened." So that number's likely far greater. That drew me in, the fact that we have such an insanely high, disproportionate amount of our veterans, it's the war trauma, or it's the sexual trauma that appears to be driving them to war in the first place. It makes sense from somebody that has had, although I didn't serve, someone who had the childhood sexual trauma in my youth, my inability to connect with my intimate relationships and my family relationships and my intimate partners was near impossible. With all that pain and trauma garbled up in my heart and my nervous system. So, the idea that our soldiers are going off to war to find that connection, which they do, they find it. War is very, very primal, very tribal. But when they come back home, many of them didn't have the resiliency skills to begin with. And should we be surprised that we have this veteran suicide tragedy at this epic proportion? The vet work, and the deeper I went down that rabbit hole, there was some really big questions, and there's 3 big questions that it brought up. Is that why the heck are so many of our veterans, why do they have this childhood sexual trauma? And the church's role in playing this. And there's pharmaceuticals, the natural question of, all right, our vets are dying by suicide, and they all have these pill bottles with skulls and crossbones. Again, should we be surprised? And then the last question that it brought up was the true cost of war. And is this something that we sign up for when we send off our troops to come back home and to have far more of our soldiers dying on our own soil here, alone, in the dark, scared, in deep pain and self-abuse? Is that something that we sign up for? So really the true cost of war. And it's really no reason that, kind of seeing the programs that are in place right now. With Worth the Fight, I'm taking a bold stance towards the church. I think that we've reached a time where, if someone, if support, if not speaking up about these atrocities makes one part of the problem, I think it's time that we need to start having these conversations. 1 in 5 of us are sexually abused in the early years of childhood development. And, I think that we've reached a time where we've evolved past our church, and we can see the corruption for what it is, and we can see how this is affecting our global family. Big Pharma, there's a lot of big question marks right now. Big Pharma's set our country on fire with the opioid crisis. We have 193 people that died of the opioid crisis every single day. No Big Pharma executives are going to see any jail time for that. 1 in 4 of us are on psychiatric medications. The psych meds, while they do work for many people, and if you do take them, please keep taking them, the reality is they barely beat the placebo. And there's a bunch of harsh side effects that come with the psych meds. And really, Big Pharma hasn't done anything for our collective mental health since the early 90s with Prozac and Paxil. And we know what Prozac Nation is, and we know that's what we've gotten to this point. With Worth the Fight, I make a bold declaration, a bold stance, a bold, I don't want to say prediction, but I believe, after studying these medicines very closely and studying the flow sciences, that we're going to see a peaceful planet in the next generation or two. And, I kind of go out on a limb a little bit with this, and exponentials are extremely challenging to gauge, to monitor. The old Ray Kurzweil, he's a Google guy who uses the exponential notion. We take 30 linear steps, we're going to make it to the street corner. We take 30 exponential steps, we're making it around planet Earth 26 times. So exponentials are extremely, we're raised with linear, all the constructs that we're raised with are linear, and exponentials are really challenging for the human mind to really fully grasp. Any good, honest talk about psychedelics must address the past. And this is a poignant comment. I was watching a YouTube video of Ram Dass and Terence McKenna. They were sitting at a cafe in Prague in the early 90s, mid-90s, enjoying some tea and rehashing what happened in the 60s and 70s. And Terence McKenna had asked Ram Dass what he thought, and what in terms of where did we go wrong? Where did we miss the beat? And Ram Dass took a couple minutes to really sit there and think it over. And I thought this was really a poignant remark. He'd said that it was our idealism and a sense of lurking righteousness. And to me, that means idealism is the inability to meet the world where the world is at. And it's ever important as we're having these incredible healing experiences, and we're healing and we're getting fit for service and fit for being the best versions of ourselves, to remember our what and whys for engaging these medicines, and to share these insights to help people that are struggling. They lost that in the 60s and 70s. They lost track of, and who's to blame them? This all came on so quickly and so fast. LSD coming out of the middle of nowhere with these massive, healing. The LSD certainly, and all of these medicines are really disruptive. And there's, Michael Pollan talks about in his book, How to Change Your Mind, about how there wasn't the cultural container in the 60s and 70s. I think we're in a different time right now. Rick Doblin says that we're not the counterculture, we are the culture. And psychedelics have a huge part. I believe 1 in 10, according to the research in Stealing Fire, 1 in 10 of us are using them on a frequent basis. So they're a huge part of our society. And Jamie Wheal, again, one of my heroes, he makes a really poignant remark that we're in a position right now where we can't make the same mistakes that we made in the 60s and 70s. We don't have time. We have a hole in our roof. We're all on the clock, and it's go time. And but it's time to make new mistakes. I'd said that for those that know me, know that I'm a big time optimist, and I believe that we're going to see some incredible things, and the future is extremely bright. The science that underlies psychedelics, meditation, and flow, it's fascinating science that I believe to be exponential. And again, exponentials are really challenging for us to gauge how they can affect our society, especially with how interconnected we are. The internet is another exponential tool. Someone can put a post out and it can have 10 million likes the next day, or 10 million views, I should say. Flow is the optimal state of consciousness. It's when action and awareness merge. The research being done by Carhart Harris at the Imperial College of London, this was a fascinating scientific study that has really rocked my world, to find out that the neurochemistry with people that are in a flow state, people that are in a psychedelic state, and people that are in a deep meditative state, it's near the same. And the term is called transient hypofrontality. It essentially, our default mode network, our ego goes offline in these healing experiences. We're finding out that that's where we feel the cathartic, and that's where we get the catharsis, and that's where we get these incredible insights. When that nagging, always on inner critic voice just goes offline, you know, and we're in this position where we can make all of these neuro connections that we normally can't make. And I found that extremely fascinating to find out that again, you know, meditation, as a meditator who's really, you know, dug in these past 4 to 5 years and has deep contemplative practice, and from somebody who wrote this book, and you know, it was flow and finding flow that really got this book done for me. And the flow research is incredible. It's showing that there's people in flow have creativity spikes of 400 to 700% higher than those that are out of flow. There's a McKinsey study that shows that executives in flow are up to 500% more productive than executives out of flow. DARPA trained snipers in flow, 430% up-leveling of learning. So we're talking about learning, creativity, and productivity, which is what makes flow an exponential and very disruptive. Those are some really high numbers. And I suspect that is how those very high numbers that we just talked about are how we're having these healing experiences. I originally found flow with ayahuasca and psilocybin, and now I get into this state in a myriad of different ways. Meditation, fasting, cacao. I was just telling the guys over here how much I love my raw, organic, ceremonial cacao. Working out, yoga, breath work, sex. I mean, there's so many different ways. Extreme sports that we get into flow. And writing has been, and actually sitting down and doing my work has been an extremely cathartic process where I've been engaging flow. The Bannister effect and the cultural rebrand of psychedelics and spirituality. Roger Bannister, Sir Roger Bannister, was the first. He ran the first 4-minute mile. It was in the, I believe, in the early 40s. It had been 5 or 6 years since a record had been topped, and I believe, you know, it was thought that running the 4-minute mile was humanly impossible. There was even urban myths that, you know, if you did run the 4-minute mile, your heart would explode. And so Sir Roger Bannister, when he broke the 4-minute mile, the next year his record was broke. The year after, that record was broke again. 5 years later, a high schooler broke the 4-minute mile record. And to date, we've had upwards of 1,300, I believe, that have run a sub 4-minute mile. So that powerful experience really shook the belief of all the runners. And I think how will the ruling in Denver and Oakland, those ripples, you know, Denver just decriminalizing magic mushrooms, and Oakland decriminalizing all entheogens, all natural plant medicine psychedelics. What kind of ripples will that send out into the ether? I often think about this path that we're on, the psychedelic renaissance, the psychedelic movement, and it's not about us. It's not about me. It is about those that are yet to come on this path. We've been doing a lot of the kind of clearing the way in terms of dealing with a lot of these bullshit incorporated dogmas, limiting beliefs that science is continually overcoming, and that we're seeing these incredible research that's being done at Johns Hopkins, Imperial College of London, NYU. Time and time again, you know, these medicines are showing that they are highly, highly effective for people that are hurting and earnestly struggling with trauma and PTSD. I'd listened to Rick Doblin, who is really the godfather of this movement. He's been doing this incredible work with MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Study. I was listening to his podcast with Aubrey Marcus, and he did a sort of state of the state in terms of, or a psychedelic state of the union on the Aubrey Marcus podcast. And he's doing a little forecasting, and he said that the year 2035 is the year that he envisions a post-prohibition world. And if that's the case, then we better get used to the journey thinking mentality, that it is the journey, and maintaining and walking this path with integrity, and remembering the importance of patience, forgiveness, selfless service, compassion, peace and understanding. Patience, really more than anything. If we're talking 2035, it means we're playing the long game. And to again, remember our what and whys for engaging these medicines. And it's always a safe bet when we're focusing our work and our efforts on helping others work through the same challenges that we've been fortunate to overcome. Of course, this number 2035, I believe that forecasted in that at 2025 would be the federal legalization of marijuana, which appears to be happening a lot faster. So perhaps that 2035, again, we're talking exponential technologies. That could move up many years, but again, taking a patient, prudent approach, making sure that we're not repeating the mistakes that we had in the 60s and 70s, so we can get this work done and do it right. This is me with Jesse Gold. I showed you a picture of me with Ryan Lecomte and my work with Veterans for Entheogenic Therapy, VET. I jumped ship on that mission, not on the mission, but in my work with VET in the summer of 2018. And we ran out of funding, and we ran out of, we're just pushing a boulder uphill. And it's my hope and prayer that with Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind, The New Science of Psychedelics, having every 50s white person in America rethinking psychedelics as a viable medicine, that we're going to have another shake at this, and especially with all of the other amazing things that we're talking about, and the exponential sciences that are coming out. Every post, every book is slowly breaking down these stigmas and essentially retelling the story. Jesse is an ultra impressive man. He's an Army Ranger, Cornell educated. He's fully in touch with the sacred duty and responsibility of the veteran cause to lead not only for the veterans, but for the collective at large. Our populace that is also in the midst of a mental health crisis, wondering what the heck is going on with these medicines. Are they legit? Do they work? Historically, the veterans have always gone first. They're the brave ones. They're the badasses. When they raise their hand, we all shut up and we listen. And Jesse says, and I agree, the veteran voice is one of the strongest tools we have to break stigmas around these powerful therapies. And again, when they speak up and they heal and have a propensity to share, there's a lot of really powerful lessons that can be imparted from our veterans, which is a good segue into the next one. This is the quote, my what and why. This is why I kick the covers off every day. Veterans are the light at the tip of the candle, illuminating the way for the whole nation. If veterans can achieve awareness, transformation, understanding, and peace, they can share with us, with the rest of society, the realities of war, and they can teach us how to make peace with ourselves and each other. If we earnestly seek a peaceful planet in this lifetime, beyond well-intentioned platitudes, I believe that healing the hearts and minds of our war veterans is an absolute must. They can teach us, as we've talked about, with those three really powerful questions that arise when we're working with our veterans. Is why do we have so many of them that have this childhood sexual trauma? Big Pharma's role in all of this, and the whole notion that of the industrial military complex that Eisenhower warned us about in the late 50s. The idea of war for its own sake and just continually war. And I'd be delusional to think that this war machine is going to be stopped overnight, and that we can have this peaceful planet. We have, I believe, the budget of the next 25 militaries combined, and but who knows how this will all shake out. And I'm a big believer in, again, that we'll see peace in our lifetime, an opportunity for our global family to come together. Are our veterans a rallying point for unifying our fractured nation and global family? I think so. Y'all know that I'm an optimist, and I've been doing this work with our vets. To me, the work with our war veterans, it's something that, this is a conversation that no one can hide from. It hits all of us in the heart. PTSD, war trauma with our veterans is bipartisan. Both sides of the aisle are in favor of our veterans healing and getting this relief. And this is a love-based solution that can bring us together. Instead of all this fighting and bickering and what we see as really our normal, rallying around, healing the hearts and minds of our war veterans, those that have honor, integrity, and courage in a time when our leadership is struggling. To me, until I get a better solution, this is the drum that I'm going to keep beating. And I really highlight this work and this vision in my book, Worth the Fight: Acting for a Better World. So I got the love fist with all the hearts. It's time. With Worth the Fight, I'm calling for a love revolution in the way that we love ourselves, our neighbors, in the way that we love the natural world. A love revolution that is rooted in peace, patience, understanding, forgiveness, compassion, kindness, selfless service. Again, the importance of patience cannot be understated. We're playing the long game here and doing this work for its own sake. I believe that we have all of the tools and technologies to get this work done. These psychedelic medicines, meditation, flow, this science, it's all new. I mean, they did a lot of work in the 60s and 70s, but we're in a position right now where the technology, this is another really super exciting thing and mind-blowing, is that the technology that underlies the psychedelic science and the meditative science and the flow science, that technology is doubling every 18 months too. We've learned more about the human brain in the last 10 years than we have in the previous 2,000 combined, and and we're only scratching the surface. So that's how I can, in good conscience, put out a bold idea like our global family coming together, and us seeing a peaceful planet. My big takeaway, or one of my big takeaways from sitting down and doing this work, like I said, I originally found healing and flow with ayahuasca and psilocybin. Tremendous relief with those powerful sacred medicines, where I could heal my heart and heal really restructure my nervous system and rebuild myself from the ground up. And I originally found flow with those plant medicines. And like I said before, I'm finding that same flow. I haven't had a peak experience since February of 2018. And I'm finding that same feeling in so many different ways. And, so it's, and I'm a big proponent in my book, and y'all will read hopefully, that, psychedelics are very optional. And to me, I had a really profound moment. This was the summer of 2018, where I was in this position where I was, all right, when's my next ayahuasca ceremony? And I was sitting with this in prayer and meditation, and it occurred to me, like, it's never been about the medicine. It's never been, it's always been about, can you own your what and why for being here? Can you do your work? Can you stand and be the man that you're supposed to be here? And And so I take maybe a contrarian view of looking at these medicines. I love Jason Silva. I think he uses the term of inverse PTSD. And once we have these profound healing experiences, they, just like those traumatic memories that we're healing from, these profound healing experiences are in our nervous system just the same way. And we can access them through meditation, through fasting, through prayer, through yoga, chanting, extreme sports, all these different ways that we can, again, find that flow state and quiet that mind chatter. And I think that, again, rallying around our war veterans and letting them show us the way to heal and overcome, that we can bring our global family together, hopefully in time. And I just want to remind everybody that we are the people, and this is our time. And thank you so much for listening. And look forward to the Q&A and talking about Worth the Fight in Chapter 7. And again, it's been an honor to share. So thank you.